it's extremely important to us for industrial manslaughter to be introduced. Yep.
Thank you.
No problem. We feel that industrial manslaughter is very important to be introduced in New South Wales, because we should be also shadowing other states. Our New South Wales workers are just as important as every other state. I believe that what's been done should be done, and that what we're proposing. Christopher was important, and so was every other life that has died at work. As a mum, as I always say, I didn't pray, or it doesn't even cross your mind to pray for them to come home safe from work. You pray for them to come home because they're driving and they've just gotten their license, or they're going out. It's a necessity to come home safe from work, not a privilege. And Christopher is special, like any other person in their family would be. He was just a shy kid, very proud of himself that he'd just started his new job. I'd only been in it for a year and a half, and 4 days after his 18th birthday, his life was taken. He's missed out on a whole life ahead of him, and we've missed out on all his, our grandchildren that he would have given us, and his future that we would have been proud of. He died the most shyest kid, but he died like a king. And I feel that it's in our responsibility to make sure that no other family shall endure this excruciating pain and sorrow that we are going through. And it's my mission to make sure that everyone goes home, and that laws are changed within government to protect workers from going to work and stay safe. Because without these deterrents, such as industrial manslaughter, it's never going to stop. All these deaths that are happening are just gut-wrenching, and it needs to stop.
Do you want to say something, Rob?
Just move over here. Yeah, we just need to protect our workers. Why is the New South Wales worker's life less important than a Queensland or a Victorian or any other state for that matter? They have IM laws, we don't. Our fines aren't strong enough, our laws aren't strong enough. We just need to protect our workers with greater penalties and making the bosses accountable if safety is thrown out the window. So we need just to protect our workers more. Thank you.
So I might just quickly get Adam to run through, and then we'll take questions.
Look, this is about raising the standard of safety in our workplaces. Too often workplace deaths are described as unfortunate accidents, but too often when you look into it you see that they're the result of cost cutting and of negligence. In appropriate cases that needs to be called out. It needs to be called for what it is, industrial manslaughter. By naming it, we can enforce better and higher standards. New South Wales once led Australia on work safety, but we've fallen way behind other jurisdictions. Queensland, Victoria, the ACT, other jurisdictions have industrial manslaughter. New South Wales and New South Wales' government has fallen well short. It's time to lift the standard.
So Adam, how does industrial manslaughter differ from manslaughter?
In the mainstream criminal law, proving manslaughter is very difficult because of the particularities of in workplaces, because responsibility is often broken along a chain from senior management down to people on the work floor. So you need special laws that say we will hold companies accountable, but we'll also hold their senior managers accountable for what actually happens in the workplace. You need to make sure, if you're talking about the chief executives, the chief financial officer, the managers and the boards, all put health and safety of their frontline workers front and centre of their considerations, because they will know that they will be held to account.
So, for example, it would be if you took an industrial manslaughter charge against it, would it be the head of the company?
In theory, I mean, other jurisdictions use the term senior officer, so you'd obviously want to look at who actually was in truth responsible for the events that occurred in the workplace. You don't want to tar everyone with the same brush, but you do want to visit responsibility where it rests, and where companies have been penny pinching on health and safety, on safety equipment, on training, where those companies and businesses are making those decisions to cut that expenditure out, then those managers and people responsible should be held to account.
And currently that's not
Well, that is not happening. In New South Wales, the most serious offences in work health and safety laws are called Category 1. I think there's only been one Category 1 prosecution since 2011, and no one has gone to jail for deaths in the workplace. That is an indicator that the laws are not good enough. This government has very bad form in prosecutions. Prosecutions under the Berejiklian government are just a bit over half what they were under the last Labor government. The coalition government, the Liberals and Nationals, have really dropped the ball on prosecuting work health and safety laws. That's not good enough, and what that does is sends a clear signal to employers in an industry that you won't get caught, and if you get caught, you won't be prosecuted. That should not be the norm, and that must not be the message that we send out to industry.
So under this plan, jail time, but what are the fines?
We will look carefully at what other jurisdictions have done in terms of fines, but we will have the highest, most stringent regime of financial penalties. But importantly, in appropriate cases where individuals are charged and prosecuted, we think the penalty should be the same as for manslaughter, that is up to 25 years, which would be the highest in Australia. Other jurisdictions with industrial manslaughter laws have jail penalties up to 20 years, which reflects the regime for manslaughter in those jurisdictions, because we want to communicate very clearly that society frowns on this. We want to have the penalties the same as for manslaughter in the mainstream criminal law, which is up to 25 years.
How do you increase support for victims?
Well, it's also about making sure that Rob and Patricia are already, in their advocacy, are already putting together a program of assisting people who have lost loved ones in the workplace. I can get them to talk about that some more, but what we need to do is to create a culture of safety in the workplace, which has been sorely lacking. Other changes that Rob and Patricia have been advocating for, about making sure that safety officers on sites are independent of the company, so there isn't that incentive to look the other way when things are going wrong, and a series of interlocked measures to make sure that we create and foster a culture of safety in workplaces right across New South Wales.
Well, I might ask Trish and Rob, just in your case in particular, the company that Chris worked for, have they had any penalties at all?
Any?
Penalties or punishment?
Oh, it's still under investigation, so there's entities there, but we don't know the outcome as yet, so...
But they can't be charged with industrial manslaughter, obviously?
No, our case is not it's going to be under the old jurisdiction, and I think the highest is $1 million, and that's it, yeah.
So this won't necessarily help you?
No.
But it may help others?
It's pushing for the change, and that's what our mission is to push the change of the laws so that it's the tougher penalties are brought in, so that people are on notice and think twice about doing things that are unsafe.
Can you tell me a little bit about Christopher's Law?
Christopher's Law is obviously to give the assurance of workers to actually speak up and say something. So we currently have with Safe Work New South Wales a safety app that they can download onto their phone and report an unsafe situation. But it's giving them the confidence to be able to say something and say, this is unsafe and I'm going to stop and remove myself, and don't feel that they're being victimised. That's the main thing. And also what Adam was saying is bringing in independent safety officers onto sites instead of having safety supervisors that are actually employed by the builder, so that they can't turn a blind eye to an unsafe situation. And it's adhered to. So there's a lot of also all the supervisors that should be on site should have kind of WHS certificates, white card not to be available online, and that it has to be in a TAFE course or by a facilitator that actually teaches the white card, and then assessed, and then you get your white card.
What's the response been from the government to these calls, your specific calls?
Look, it's positive, but it needs to move quickly. We can't wait any longer. I don't want this to be stretched over years. It's a thing that needs to be nipped on the butt now, because there's too many deaths. There's way too many deaths, and we need to stop this from happening. I can't bring my son back. There's nothing I can do. But if I can save one more life, I'd be happy.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming along today for what I believe is a really important policy by Labor in the lead up to Christmas in particular. With me are Trish and Rob, who lost their son Christopher earlier this year. And Christopher was killed in his workplace on a construction site. And Trish and Rob have been active and passionate about seeing changes made to workplace law in this state, and we're really pleased to be able to announce that we will be introducing a new offence of industrial manslaughter. Can I say that we're one of the only states that doesn't have industrial manslaughter, and it just is astounding that the government has not moved in this direction. But when you consider a situation that this family has found themselves in with the death of Christopher, you understand why this is necessary and why people have to be held to account. Because someone should not go to work and not come home. When you go to work, you should come home, and your family should expect you to come home. What industrial manslaughter does is ensure that in a workplace, if there is negligence, then those who are negligent are held to account. So this will involve very, very stiff penalties. So some of the most significant fines, the highest fines in the country, but also up to 25 years jail. And we are talking about manslaughter in the workplace, and that is exactly what it is. As we go into Christmas, I think it's important to remember that there are families right across New South Wales who are in this situation, who have lost someone simply because they've gone to work. It's important that we recognise in the last 10 days alone we've had 2 crane collapses, and a 49-year-old man unfortunately die on a workplace in Darling Harbour. In September alone we had 5 people who died in New South Wales simply because they went to work, and this has to stop. And we believe a significant deterrent is introducing industrial manslaughter. This will send a very strong message to every boss, every contractor who has a position of responsibility on a workplace, that they must provide a safe workplace. We know that on construction sites across this state, we have buildings that have significant defects. And usually what that means is that we also have workplaces that aren't living up to the standards that are required of them in construction. So what we're saying today is that Labor will do what Trish and Rob have asked for, and we will introduce a range of measures, the most significant of which is industrial manslaughter. Well, we've said that we'll introduce our own bill next year. That's the commitment that we've made to Rob and Patricia today. But the government is introducing some legislation next year. They've ruled out industrial manslaughter. We will seek to amend that bill. And I would urge the government to think very carefully about how we build a culture of safety completely within our workplaces. And that's what we don't have. And that requires very tough penalties and jail time, and that's what we're proposing.
So given that the government has ruled it out, what are the chances of this getting up at all?
Look, I think that in the upper house, if it's an amendment or we put our own bill up, I think it's reasonably strong. We know that there are crossbench MPs who feel equally as strong about this as we do, and we'll be seeking their support. But But I think that ultimately this rests with the current government, and I would urge them to think about Christopher's situation and what took Christopher's life, and to understand that there needs to be a very strong message sent to anyone who is negligent in a workplace. We have seen so many accidents in this state in recent times, and this has to stop, and that's the commitment we're making today. Can I also say that as we approach Christmas, I think it's really important to understand that there are families who will go into Christmas who have lost loved ones simply because they went to work. How is that acceptable?